Parishioners at Shrine of the Little Flower are praying and making cards for a boy they've never met, but who's managed to touch their hearts.
I'll see you next week. Good to see you.
That boy is 14-year-old Trevor Sullivan.
Hi, Trevor!
Hi!
An 8th grader at Berkshire Middle School who suddenly finds himself the center of attention.
Landing on the roof.
Yeah, we're landing on the roof.
Oh, yeah.
Where else would you land?
Last month, Trevor came down with what seemed like a common cold.
Besides my stomach hurting, I was fine.
Everything kept pointing to the upper respiratory infection and having brought on like some asthma symptoms.
But after several trips to the family's pediatrician, Trevor's symptoms didn't go away.
We had no clue, to be quite honest with you. We just thought it was a normal, everyday cold.
Then Trevor's parents, Philip and Kimberly, started to notice something even more alarming.
The red flag, I think, for my wife and I was the fact that he gained 12 pounds all of a sudden and that he had not been eating anything.
Trusting their gut, they took Trevor to Beaumont Hospital.
Sure enough, we thought maybe appendicitis, appendix was going to come out.
But that didn't turn out to be the case. Trevor's situation much worse than the Sullivans could have ever imagined.
They looked stunned, and they were saying that what they were seeing isn't something they see every day.
Trevor was in complete heart failure.
It was awful because you're just kind of going in and out, and it's hard to breathe.
It was frightening. It was very frightening. Within an hour or so, we were airlifted.
As paramedics airlifted Trevor to Mott Children's Hospital, Philip and Kimberly started the long drive to Ann Arbor, a car ride neither one of them will ever forget.
It was the longest hour ever.
Then came the news the Sullivans never thought they'd hear.
Monday afternoon is when they finally told us we're going to have to do a heart transplant.
That was another very numb moment, sort of, also where it felt like, my stomach just dropped out.
Without a new heart, doctors gave Trevor a few months to a year to live.
I'd been dreading those words for a few days. I think somewhere in my gut, I knew that he was just in that bad a shape.
It took everyone by surprise.
None of this was ever found, not that our doctor's faults or anything like that. It's just amazing that this has happened, actually, and nobody knows why.
Trevor spent the next 3 weeks in the hospital, where visitors started dropping in one by one. His football coaches, teachers, even his principal stopped by.
As a parent myself, I can't even imagine what Trevor's family is going through as far as his parents. Having to even contemplate the mortality of your child has to be devastating.
When word spread, students across the district began a card writing campaign. Those Get Well cards, along with Trevor's retired football jersey, number 56, now line his bedroom walls.
Trevor's an amazing young man, and he's impacted so many people here at Berkshire and in the community. So when we heard that, this was going on with him, it was an immediate call for action. What can we do to try to help out him and his family?
Trevor's friends and teachers began selling wristbands and hats to rally for Team Trevor.
I think knowing the family, being friends with them, and knowing what they were going through, having children the same age, and just trying to imagine how hard it must be for them. I think the mothers, all of us who have children, it just really hit home that it could happen to any of us.
While he can't go back to class just yet, days after leaving the hospital, Trevor had a chance to visit Berkshire, where he was greeted with a hero's welcome.
Yeah, I hope I can get back really soon.
What was it like walking into the auditorium?
Just like everyone's clapping, and then some people were just like staring at me, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's actually like still alive." Wow.
Big old Trevor.
The Sullivans continue to rely on their school community for strength.
We're just taking it day by day right now, to be honest with you. It's one of those things that needs to be done. We're going to jump in and we're going to do it together as a family and get through it as best as we possibly can.
A community that's opened their hearts for a boy who desperately needs a new one.
If people alone by supporting him could fix him, the amount of support he has, he'd be fixed already.
All the cars in front of you, including yours, cannot park there.
You're inside a Detroit courtroom as driver after driver comes in to battle their parking ticket.
I believe this to be a valid ticket.
Most have a story why they shouldn't have received a ticket.
I have parked there for months and I've never received one of these.
Others just end up here, paying their fee to the city. The defenders did some digging, trying to find out who were the top lawbreakers owing the most money. Through public records, we developed a top 10 list. Number 10 on the list, Kenneth Nunga from Southfield, owing $8,540. Ninth, Savonia McClure from Detroit, who owes $8,575. Eighth on the list, Blair Del Mahone of Detroit. He owes the city $8,740. Now, Mahone should really know better because he was a Detroit police officer. Yep, it was his job to enforce the law, but he racked up thousands of dollars in tickets to the city, never paying his due.
To not pay a ticket and you live here in the city too, I think that's bold.
Detroit Police Headquarters was not willing to talk about one of their former officers. Now, back to the list. Seventh, Thomas Matthews from Highland Park owes more than $9 grand. Tanya Cross from Southgate owes more than $10 grand. And Janice Suber from Detroit owes the city more than $11 grand in unpaid parking tickets.
Well, I think they should get it paid up before so the city can get out of debt.
The top 4 lawbreakers not paying their parking tickets in Detroit? We found a lady by the name of Michelle Marlowe Klims from San Diego. She owes more than $11 grand. Calvin Cousins from Detroit owes more than $13,500. Number 2 on the list, a company by the name of Rent-A-Ride USA. Now, it's registered to this home in Warren, but the company is actually owned by Majid Dabish. He owns this fancy house over on Pelletier Boulevard in Orchard Lake, but apparently can't afford to pay his $14,210 tab for unpaid parking tickets to the city of Detroit.
I don't think that's fair, you know what I'm saying? Because that's what's hindering our city right now.
Number 1 on the list, Dice Global Investments in Detroit, owned by Osama Khadi. He owes the city $15,355 in unpaid parking tickets. So what does the city have to say about all the money owed?
We're looking at other methods that I'm not really at liberty to talk about, but there are other more aggressive methods to satisfying this debt.
Canty says outdated addresses add to the problem of collecting the cash.
We also cannot go outside of the city limits to do things like booting and impounding.
So what is the city doing now to try to get the millions owed?
We're now using driver's license hold. This will prevent you from getting your driver's license renewed.
The city is also reporting drivers with unpaid parking tickets to the credit bureau and taking others to court. But still, much more needs to be done. Taxpayers agree.
They need to start finding a better way to get their money, or a better way to enforce parking, because $82 million owed to the city is already bankrupt. That's crazy.
You may find your old neighborhood to be much as it was, or you may have no interest in going back. But if you lived in a place like Gratiot and 7 Mile, memories are the only road home.
And I looked around to see who said that.
Back in the 1950s, they were students at Assumption Grotto Grade School.
The worst thing that happened with the nuns was when they switched from yardsticks to meter sticks, because it increased their range 3 inches.
During their monthly lunches in the suburbs, they swapped stories about the old Detroit neighborhood. Visual references have vanished.
When we leave here, we feel so much younger than when we came in. We were talking about our youth.
But what about the place of their youth? I asked 3 of them to go back: Alan Gall, Gary Petrus, and Ron Slongo.
Remember when there was a Kinsel's?
Yes.
Yeah. Kinsel's before it became Cunningham's? Wow, Gary, remember when we can walk down these streets? This was our neighborhood.
Gary lived in this house on Lyndhurst.
We used to have a porch swing there, and because we had the swing, this was like a meeting place in the neighborhood.
He remembers painting the porch and the steps.
The big sofa would be there. My mom would, on a Sunday afternoon, would probably be taking a nap on that after dressing all the kids for church, putting together Sunday dinner.
Detroit's population is more than 1 million lower than when Gary lived here in the 1950s.
And we had a table and 11 people sitting around it.
In this little space? His mother was here until 1990. Gary believes the house has been vacant since 1999.
And you see this now, and it looks like, Christ, it looks like it's going back to nature, you know? Heartbreaking, really.
After that visit, we needed a lift. We got it when Ron stopped by his old house on Hickory Street.
It looks good. It looks good. You know, we didn't have the air conditioners, but other than that, Looks the same. Look at the windows, leaded glass.
But Gittrey Street, where Alan grew up, is surrounded by a meadow.
Wow. This is it. Home sweet home.
Just about all the houses are gone, but Alan can still see his old neighborhood.
There was Mr. Beardmore, the Lantinis, the Rakoviches, the Antons, the Cornishes. Kids were playing constantly.
Their school is gone too.
Yeah, that first walk over there was the front of the school. We'd have to line up in front every morning.
But Assumption Grotto Church is still here, the one familiar place.
You know, it's like the entire fabric of your childhood is wiped out. But you come in here, and it's reassuring, actually.
So is the sight of new houses in their neck of the woods. The guys are happy to know that people are moving into some parts of Detroit, and the city's financial house may no longer be a house of cards. Meanwhile, they'll keep savoring the memories of growing up in a great city.
I want to see it to be vibrant. I want to be able to have my grandkids see Detroit the way I saw it. And I think it can happen.
I'm Roger Weber, Local 4.
It was just before school started, and I started having some abdominal pains and indigestion.
Tony Quinn is a college professor specializing in immunology at the University of Toledo.
And then I noticed I was starting to lose weight. And I noticed because I was putting my pants on one morning, and I noticed the notch had gone over like a whole spot.
He saw his doctor, who became concerned and ordered a CAT scan of his abdomen. The results were not good.
He told me that there was a lesion on the pancreas, and he thought maybe it was pancreatic cancer. It was devastating because essentially to me what he was saying is you have 6 months to live.
But as an expert in immunology, he did his own research.
I wanted to do something that was pushing the edge, something that was unconventional.
And that led him to a team of researchers, including Dr. Larry Lum, the director of immunotherapy at the Karmanos Cancer Institute.
I see immunotherapy being combined with the optimal for various specific diseases so that you could actually, turn some of these more lethal diseases into chronic diseases.
In Tony's case, the optimal treatment was chemotherapy in addition to a new form of immunotherapy using specifically trained killer cells from his own immune system.
We took his own live cells, expanded them, and armed them so that they could be smart after we multiplied them many times in the laboratory. So now we have an army of targeted cells going back into him.
This is more advanced than standard immunotherapy. Here's a military analogy. First, let's get the stomach and the liver out of the way so that you can see the cancer right here on the pancreas. Chemotherapy, it's like carpet bombing. You hit the target, but damage all sorts of other areas. So let's start fresh. The antibody immunotherapy locks onto only the cancer cells, the same way ground troops paint a target with a laser. There's less collateral damage, and it's very effective. But this treatment, it combines the targeting antibody with killer cells from the patient, creating an immune-guided missile.
I think this is a major leap forward in terms of personalized care.
It was much better than chemo. With immunotherapy, I was able to go back to work. I taught that summer, and I went back to full-time teaching.
Because this is a clinical trial, no one knows how Tony will do long-term, but the time he has had and its quality has exceeded expectations.
I've had the opportunity to attend my nephew's graduation, attend another family reunion. I've watched students graduate from the university. I've watched programs become implemented that I've worked on for 2 to 3 years.
I think the biggest hope is to be able to really turn pancreatic cancer into a chronic disease.
My expectation is to utilize the time that I have and consider it precious and milk it for all it's worth.